It's time now for the most important practice of this NASCAR Sprint Cup weekend at the Chicagoland Speedway in Joliet, Illinois. It's been a volatile weather day. We had heavy rain for a while around the lunch hour. Temperatures now about 80 degrees. A lot of humidity in the area. There is a chance for a second shower, but for the most part, the second one has missed us. Steve Burns, Larry McReynolds, and Jeff Hammond back with you. So, Larry, we talked about the fact that this is the most important practice of the weekend, closest to actual race conditions tomorrow night.
Well, the first thing I might say, we've had everything but snow here today. We've had every kind of weather you can have, but there's no question this is as close as it's going to be to when we start this 400-mile race tomorrow night. And there was a lot of cars in that first practice. They were not driving very good, including our points leader, Tony Stewart. So even though I think there's major changes going on in the garage area to a lot of race cars, there's a lot of anticipation going on. If you go back to qualifying last night, we know how much this track changed, especially gain grip as we got into the nighttime, and that's what a lot of these crew chiefs, engineers, and drivers are doing. I know we need to make our car better, but this racetrack is going to change too.
It's going to keep changing, and Steve, we talked about this in the first practice. There are 7 guys in that garage area right now that haven't won a race, that won a race a year ago, and they're looking to break through. We've already talked about, we've only run 9 races here at this Chicagoland Speedway, and we've only got 2 guys that have won more than 1 race. So I think it's a great opportunity for somebody like Carl Edwards, Jeff Burton. You go down the list, Denny Hamlin, they all need to get to victory lane, and their cars were pretty good in that first practice. If they can get them fine-tuned in, they could take advantage of a tricky racetrack. But as Larry talked about, if you keep up with the changes of this racetrack in this final hour and a half, could be huge and pay good dividends for them come tomorrow night.
Tony Stewart and Kevin Harvick, the only drivers who have won more than 1 race here. Harvick won the first 2 races, 2001 and 2002. Tony's wins have come broken up.
And you mentioned Kevin Harvick. I mean, they've got a new race car here this weekend. And at the end of practice, he was talking about the car was turning better. They needed to work on it just a little bit. He's a guy that, he loves this racetrack. He runs well at it. And what a better place for him to kind of turn his season around and RCR to kind of get things going right now as we take a look at the number 29 car as he gets ready to roll off the pit road.
Looking back at Jimmy Johnson in that 48 car, he was the fastest in that first practice session. Of course, this is one of the few places that he has not won, but in 7 starts, he has 5 top 5s and 6 top 10 finishes. Finished second last year to Kyle Busch.
In other words, he's got victory lane surrounded.
It's everywhere but right there. And of course, this is a home game for his crew chief, Chad Canals, from just up the road to Rockford, Illinois.
And the only thing I got to say about the 48 car, he's been talking about it in different interviews, he feels like his place owes him one. He let one slip away last year, and I guarantee you, Chad Canals ain't let him forget it either.
Getting a report also that the 20 car of Joey Logano, you can see him right on pit road. Deck pin not properly fastened, but it looks like they've got it taken care of, and he will head out for practice.
NASCAR official kind of steps in and helps out a little bit.
Joining us in this practice, we go down to the garage area, and Matt Yoakum.
Steve, 2 things very predictable when we come to Chicagoland Speedway. 1, the weather will never stay consistent from practice session to practice session. And 2, the 48 of Jimmy Johnson will always be fast. Jeff and Larry, you documented. He's had 2 seconds and 2/3 of 4th. He should have won a couple of those races, but he didn't. Still remembers that race from a year ago, but they brought a very stout race car. It led 146 of the 200 laps at Michigan. And Jimmy told me moments before he climbed in the car, they were very close. They're just tweaking during this practice session because they know this car extremely fast. The worst it's been in any session on the racetrack this weekend, 4th. Let's go across the garage area to Marty Snyder. And Marty, thankfully, no wintry mix.
Yeah, indeed. We are chasing a lot of weather, aren't we, Matt? We were just talking about all these weather changes today. How many times has the weather changed today, Carl?
Weather's changed quite a bit. Earlier today, I did not think we were going to make it. But that jet stream's pretty far north, and I don't know what that means, but it is.
It sounded good.
It's far north.
Does that count for anything?
Seems to be working.
Yeah, McReynolds is supposedly a meteorologist, but I don't know if we should believe that or not. How much has the track changed during that session?
Well, that cloud layer kind of went away, and it didn't really change much there, but I think it's going to be different right now with the sun. So I don't know how much to trust this, we're racing at night. So I think that this will be one of those rare weeks where that nationwide race will help me quite a bit for tomorrow. Be able to tell what the track's going to do. And we got a great Aflac Fusion here, and I hope it's as good tomorrow night.
All right, they're making major changes. Pierre Cattell, his car chief, just tapped him on the shoulder, said get into the car. Big change here for the 99. And by the way, Larry Mack, want to make sure you're listening. Carl had a very important question for me to ask you. What time is NASCAR Performance on tomorrow? Because he wasn't sure about that.
It's 3 p.m. Eastern time, but I totally agree with what Carl just said. I'm almost believing that the first practice is going to be closer to conditions tomorrow night because we had no sun in that practice, and now, I mean, the sun is just beating down on this racetrack.
It is, and you've mentioned about the 99 car making big changes. They were good in that first practice session. They were fast. Their 5 and 10 lap average was right there at the top. So, I mean, I think you almost got to be careful that Bob Osborne and that number 99 crew, they don't get themselves dialed out here during this final practice, because it's going to be, I guarantee you, watching that sun come out and feeling the windows here up in the booth, it feels like it's going to be 10 or 15 degrees hotter than what it was just about 45 minutes ago.
Well, it's an occluded front with a weak high-pressure system that has stalled out.
Are you trying to impress us or what?
I saw that on the news this morning.
Getting ready to say, everybody wants to be a weatherman, except me.
It's Larry Mack.
The good news is the weather looks great for tomorrow night.
But the point is, difficult for these teams, drivers, crew chiefs, engineers, what have you, to keep chasing this racetrack with their eye on the prize, which is tomorrow night.
Well, I think this is where the experience will prevail. Obviously, we've been here 8 years. We've got a lot of drivers and crew chiefs. They have a lot of experience at this racetrack. It's the same tire combination we raced here a year ago. So what you have to do is take the data from this practice, the data from the earlier practice, not to mention the race runs that a lot of teams made yesterday. And that's where you got to come up with the formula of how you want to start this race, and plenty of adjustments built into it.
This practice scheduled for 1 hour and 15 minutes. Mark Martin, the quickest early. Stay with us here on Speed. Speed's presentation of NASCAR Sprint Cup Final Practice from Chicago is brought to you by We. 8 minutes into an hour and 15-minute practice. Dale Earnhardt Jr., 19th overall right now in his National Guard Chevrolet.
Had a great qualifying run last night. In fact, he was pretty happy with his car all day yesterday. He's going to start 13th, but I know in long race runs in that first practice session, he was not that happy with that 88 car. In fact, he was 21st quickest, ran a total of 29 laps. I mean, I think if you just watch this right here, this is going to tell you about the speed around this mile-and-a-half racetrack.
Real good. It's a little too loose everywhere.
He's actually coming in. But I mean,
10-4 entry, center, and exit. Yeah, I can wreck it anywhere you want.
Did he say I can wreck it anywhere you want?
Anywhere you want
I thought he said.
On board right now with Mark Martin, and guys, look at the leaderboard. He is the fastest cat out there. He's got the fastest 5-lap average. He's also got the fastest 10-lap average, and he's run 14 laps in this deal. So I mean, looks to me like they may have found a pretty good combination here for him.
And you know, we only had about 15 or 20 minutes between these two practice sessions. Jeff, you and I were looking. They didn't make many changes to this car. He was sitting in line about 10 minutes before this practice even started.
And how many laps did he run that first practice?
I think it was right at 30 or a little over 30.
Go back to Marty.
Guys, Kyle Busch just came back into the garage area, and obviously the track a lot more, less grip in this session than was in the last session. A lot of the drivers who were saying they were tight in the last session now saying they're loose in this session. And the interesting thing is it goes against conventional wisdom, but the longer these guys are running, to a man, they're all saying the looser they're getting. Really, that's a product, really, of the tires falling off, losing a lot of grip. That's what a lot of these guys are facing. That's what Kyle Busch just said. After about 10 laps, so loose, he can barely hang on to it, Matt.
And Marty, that's very similar to his brother Kurt Busch down in the 2 garage. Busch said the car extremely loose in and off. He wants to do a combo platter of adjustments, both wedge and track bar, to also work on the center of the corner. He and Pat Tryson had a long debrief. They're getting ready to make a spring change in the left rear. And this is somebody that's really been on a roll. And Steve, we've really documented it over the past month. You just compare this year to last year, and you can see the turnaround, not only what this team has done, but the entire Penske organization. And they really feel like they can take it up a notch as we inch ever closer to the chase.
Well, I'd say if they're loose, there's really a good chance they're probably stiffening that left rear spring. That'll help the forward drive off the corner under acceleration.
And to Matt's point, a year ago, 18th in the standings for Kurt Busch. comes here to Chicagoland fourth.
And in pretty good shape.
Yes, sir.
Big turnaround right there, but those guys have done a lot of work, not only on the cars, but also in the engine department, and it's paying off for them.
You guys find it odd that there was a report today that Brian Vickers says he hasn't signed his contract yet?
And you know, he actually told us that on
He did.
trackside a few weeks ago.
At Loudon, sure did.
And of course, there continues to be rumors circulating around Red Bull Racing as to will they still be Toyotas in 2010. But they flat got it done last night here in qualifying. Brian Vickers sitting on the pole by 0.2 of a second, and his teammate, the rookie Scott Speed, outside of the front row.
And Larry, let me pose a question to you. Running this well, 5 poles, it looks like the team's really starting to, come together. Why? Why would you make wholesale changes? Why would you maybe lose? I mean, I don't know what's going on in the negotiations as far as the contract's concerned, but it looks to me like Red Bull's got a good thing with Brian Vickers, and Brian Vickers has got a good thing with Red Bull as well as Toyota.
Well, I'm going to be quite honest with you, and this is nothing against Scott Speed. I could not believe after they had spent a year and a half, year and 3/4 of going through the learning curve that A.J. Allmendinger went through, and just about the time it looked like they were about to reap the fruits of their labor with A.J., they released him. So I don't know. They pull some strange things over there.
Well, the good news is Brian Vickers is 3rd fastest overall in this practice. And again, his 5th pole of 2009. He did that last night. And Scott Speed will start alongside him, his teammate, in row 1.
Right now, Brian Vickers has run a total of 14 laps. There's the man we were talking about, our old boy A.J. Allmendinger. He's a humdinger, sitting there, 23rd quickest. He's run a total of 12 laps. He'll start 20th tomorrow night. Has the one start here last year, actually ended up finishing 13th a year ago.
Help entry. Help stabilize the exit too tight. Made it about 25% tighter in the center there. Hurt me through the center.
This place is like walking on a tightrope. You can fix the center, you hurt the exit. You can help the exit, you fix the exit, hurt the center. It's fickle.
Steve Addington watching atop the M&M's transporter. Hope you'll continue watching at home. Back at the Chicagoland Speedway, final practice for tomorrow's LifeLock.com 400 here at the Chicagoland Speedway. Mark Martin is the quickest. He has completed 14 laps, as has the second quickest driver, Clint Boyer. Let's take a look at our track temps. First practice, 84 degrees. The sun has come out. It's humid, and that track surface is changing.
And this is an aggravation right here. It's nothing you can control, but I think everyone anticipated, if weather allowed us to get these practice sessions in, that this practice right here would be the one that would be the most important. The one I circled that disappeared.
Are they playing mind games with you?
94.
I mean, first they pop that little deal out there, you're not expecting it, and all of a sudden you got to
dinosaur eggs,
do some drawing, and
just not having a good day.
Oh, me. Hey, it's only the final one we got to do today, so it'll be all right.
It's just been that kind of a day.
Between the weather and other things, it's going to be kind of challenging. Oh, man.
You know, this has been a good racetrack for Denny Hamlin as far as performance.
I don't mean to laugh, Harry, just as you got started.
But he just can't close the deal.
Like you.
Exactly.
Sorry.
But he has a best finish of 14th back in 2006,
go
but
ahead.
he's led a lot of laps at this place.
Yeah, but it sounded to me though like Steve Addington was trying to get him to go ahead and come in and maybe do a little more work on that 11 car. But here's the 24 of Jeff Gordon. He's currently 8th, and he's run 8 laps in that 24. So be interested to see what Jeff has to say and think about his race car.
Curious, I want to ask you guys, Mark Martin, Clint Boyer, Brian Vickers, the 3 fastest. They've run 14, 14, and 18 laps, respectively, what kind of lap count do you expect to see on these cars in this practice? It's an hour and 15 minutes. I'm curious, do you want to get your work done early? Are you going to run some laps, come in, talk about it, then go back out? What's the agenda?
I think what you have to do when we get about 20 minutes out from the end of this practice, you have to come up with what is our best package. Let's put our best package on there. Let's fill it up with fuel. Let's put 4 fresh tires on there, and let's make a good, long 15, 18, maybe 20 lap run. A fuel run here is roughly about 54 to 58 laps. If you can get well beyond that on a set of tires and the fuel load, I think that will give you a good indication of what your car is going to be like.
And Steve, I think a lot of it right now is going to be dictated off of this track temperature. I mean, we're keeping up with it, so are the teams. They have an idea how much grip they're losing based off of the track heating up. And as you go through your process of changes and what you're trying to do with your car, you know, you want to make sure you keep accurate track of it, so that you come in here tomorrow and all of a sudden it's very similar conditions. You can go back and say, okay, we start this race off, we need to tune the car from here to there. I mean, these race cars, just because you put a setup underneath it, it will not be the only adjustment you make for 400 miles. So out of all these weather changes, you're taking bits and pieces and you're going to build a package. Your final package will probably not go underneath this car till tomorrow morning.
Let's go back to Marty.
Well, guys, I think Mark Martin and Alan Gustafson have been listening to what you're saying. Can I just talk to Mark and to Alan? They may take these 14 laps in this final session and head to the house. They feel like they're really not accomplishing anything out there. They did exactly what you just mentioned, Jeff. They wanted to go out, make sure the baseline setup was okay. They're comfortable with it. And Alan just told me, you know what? I don't think we're going to gain anything by going back out right now. So unless the track cools down, they may park the 5 for the rest of the day.
And they may sit tight to see if cloud coverage roll in and cool this racetrack down. You may see them back out there.
Yeah, if the track temperature goes up to, let's say, 95, 96 degrees, and all of a sudden it starts cooling back down, and it gets back closer to 85 degrees or 86 degrees, a lot of the guys may say, okay, that's going to be more indicative of what we're going to see tomorrow, and we'll go back out and try to get some more information. Now, they've got information now with a hot racetrack. Now they're going to be looking at what they know they're going to be racing on, which will be a cooler racetrack later on tomorrow night. And that is a very smart man when it comes to knowing and predicting what he's going to need in a race car. And I think he and Alan Gustafson make a great pair of not overreacting to their adjustments.
Jeff Burton was 19th in that first practice. Right now, he's 4th quickest.
And he's one of the, I think there's about 16 drivers that's doing the double duty, running the Nationwide Series race a little bit later on the night. And then, of course, the race here tomorrow. And I think Carl Edwards said it at the top of the show, because of the conditions we're kind of encountering here, having that information, you may not be able to apply it to the Sprint Cup Series car, but you'll at least know what the racetrack's going to do.
And thank goodness for one other thing. A week ago in Daytona, it was an impound race. Here, they can take that information, they can work on the cars all the way up to the time they need to be introduced to the inspection line, so you can get your car dialed in the way you think you need it.
Jeff Burton's best finish here in 8 starts is 2nd. We watched his teammate Clint Boyer, as we said a moment ago, 2nd fastest in this practice.
He's going to start 5th tomorrow night. This is the car that they raced at Michigan back in June, finished 10th with it.
Boyer with 2 top 10 finishes in his 3 Chicagoland starts.
The winner from the Nationwide Series race last week at Daytona, Richard Childress Racing's first win, period, in 2009.
Stay with us. We'll be right back to Chicagoland. Thursday, it's the premiere of Big Block Thursday on Speed. 3 big hours of races, chases, and crashes, with picks all out at 8, then jacked at 9, and wrecked at 10. Got plans Thursday night? Well, you do now. Big Block Thursday premieres next Thursday at 8 Eastern. All new episodes of all 3 of those programs. On board with Tony Stewart, last week's winner at the Daytona International Speedway.
And Steve, what's interesting, we've been kind of following the story that in the first practice he wasn't happy with his car. They made a lot of changes, and actually we're 23 minutes into this practice and he has only completed his 4th lap on the track. So they've been a little bit behind getting his 14 car back out.
And he's going to start from deep in the field. He's going to end up starting 32nd. You see him driving around a lot of cars, which certainly makes it look like he's got a good race car, but he probably has a lot fresher tires than a lot of those guys that he's out there. And who would ever believe that 1 year ago, the buzz was the announcement that Tony Stewart made in the media center here that he'd already made the announcement he was leaving Joe Gibbs Racing, but he was going to be moving to Gene Haas, forming Stewart Haas Racing, and here 1 year later, leading the points, winner of the Sprint All-Star race at Lowe's in May, and now he's won 2 races in 2009 already with this 14 car.
You know, you mentioned 14 car, just now dawned on me. We got the break coming up next week, but can you imagine what it's going to be like when we get to the Brickyard in a couple of weeks? Him with his 14 car. I'm just wondering if is the guy that he got this number from, AJ Foyt, will be up there, especially with all the success that AJ's had in Indianapolis, if he's going to be up there with Tony.
Well, we know how much Tony loves to win at Indy. We've seen him do it twice, but to be able to win there and take the 14 number,
oh yeah,
and kiss the bricks,
be very
that
special.
would be pretty cool.
Very special.
Matt, what's going on with his teammate Ryan Newman?
Well, you talk about the Brickyard coming up, and no one would love to win that race more than Ryan Newman. Remember, he put his name on the big league charts by winning the night before the 500 midget car race out at ORP, the old Indianapolis Raceway Park. Now looking at this 39 car, which he used that number that night as well, he is very close. Right now, this team just nitpicky on different small adjustments that he wants to make, trying to fine-tune different areas of that race car. They just made a shock change, but Ryan said on the radio that he's very comfortable and secure on entry through the center and on exit. But it's all about information, guys, and you crew chiefs take note of this. The first practice session today, the track temperature was 83. Right before the sun really started burning out here moments ago, it's gone up to 90. And about 2 runs ago, and you can really go into this in detail, Tony Gibson had Newman stop and get a Goodyear tire sheet and explain for the folks at home the different things as a crew chief, what you're looking for on that tire sheet.
Well, Matt, what you're doing, you're trying to see exactly how each one of those 4 tires are basically hooking up to the racetrack. You take a quick look right here at most laps run around Chicagoland in this final practice. You'll see Clint Boyer with 25. There's Ryan Newman with 23, followed by Kyle Busch, AJ Allmendinger, and the 47 car Marcus Ambrose. But what you're trying to determine is not only your right front and how it's compared to the other 3 tires, the wear will be determined also when it gets back inside the garage here, but it gives you an idea of which one of the tires maybe is overworked or not working hard enough, and that's what you will make your adjustments accordingly with, either a shock or a spring, to try to plant that tire to help that race car. Because we talk about balance, Steve, that's what you're trying to make. That's what tells you about your balance.
And Jeff, Larry, let's take this one step further. When they get that Goodyear tire sheet, they've measured the temperatures of the tire surface on the outside edge, the middle, and the inside edge. That's one of the tuning tools.
Well, and you really want that on the 2 front tires, because that may lead you to how you want to adjust the camber, a front end setting. But then you'll average those 3 temperatures of all 4 tires, and that will tell the crew chief, along with things like air pressure buildup and things of that nature, and wear that Jeff mentioned, that will tell the crew chief what the balance of the car is front and rear. And in the perfect world, you hope that jives with what your driver's telling you.
Yeah, it's not an exact science, but it's pretty darn good. I mean, that's what we've been doing ever since basically the beginning of taking tire temperatures way back when. That's where crew chiefs started learning how to adjust their race cars.
What a qualifying effort by former series champion Bill Elliott. 53 years old. He will start from row 4 in the 8th spot.
And he was by far the fastest forward, and yeah, he was a go-or-go-homer, even though he had the guaranteed championship provisional. But unlike at Daytona, had we have gotten qualifying in, this was not an impound weekend, so everybody pretty much was on full kill qualifying mode last night.
That's one thing about the Wood brothers this year.
Now, the only thing I will say about this 21 car, Steve, you mentioned that he qualified 8th. I look in this practice session right here. He is 38th quickest. He's run a total of 19 laps, and in that first practice, he was only 37th quickest. So maybe don't have this car driving good. It's fast, but maybe not driving what Bill's looking for.
See Jeff Gordon in the 24 car. He is 8th right now, and Marty has an update on that team.
Just chatted with Steve Letarte after they sent Jeff Gordon back out. They are extremely pleased with this 24 car. He and his teammate Jimmy Johnson very good on old tires. Gordon made a very, very slight change to the car. A little bit tied off forward. He's very happy with the consistency of the car. We haven't heard a lot of drivers say they're happy with the consistency of the race car. Jeff Gordon is. I think they may be done after this run too. Very happy with that 24 car, guys.
You know, the one thing I see, and we heard this from a lot of crew chiefs and drivers yesterday that were making race runs, is this tire, being the same combination we ran a year ago, it has a lot of give up. I'm seeing a lot of guys, their fast lap, 30-70s, 80s, 31-0s, 31-teens, and right now a lot of guys running in the high 31s and low 32s even after 15 to 20 laps.
30 minutes down of a 1 hour, 15-minute practice. Stay with us here at the Chicagoland Speedway on Speed. Tomorrow, don't miss NASCAR Race Day as we take a look at Tony Stewart's incredible season. Plus, get to know the man calling the shots for the 14 team, Darian Grubb. NASCAR Race Day, built by the Home Depot, live from Chicagoland tomorrow, 4:30 Eastern. David Rudiman, 6th overall, driving for Michael Waltrip Racing, headed to the garage.
And Larry, we talked about him as being one of the guys who is on the outside looking in with one win in our first practice, but right now he's looking pretty darn racy in that 00 car, and I know that he likes this racetrack. It fits his driving style. Ever since the first time he showed up back driving at that time a Busch car for Joe Nemechek and working with Brian Patty, they were bad fast here early on.
That's a brand new race car they brought here for David Rudiman at 00.
Casey Mears in the 07 Jack Daniels Chevrolet out of Richard Childress Racing. Right now, 14th overall. He has finished 16 laps working on number 17.
And you know, this is one of those teams, you know, Richard Childress made the crew chief swap a couple of months ago. Todd Barrier, that used to be with Kevin Harvick, and essentially the whole team over there with Casey Mears. And they seem to keep flirting with running better, you know, but it's like they can't quite get across the hump. You know, he has 2 top 10 finishes this year. He's sitting 22nd in the points, but there's no question what this team is focused on for the next 18 races. I don't know if it's necessarily winning a race. I don't think it's about making any chase. It's just about trying to get good and competitive for these next 18 races.
Take a look at the Richard Childress Racing stable in this final practice. Kevin Harvick struggling.
Well, and you look at those top 2 right there. That's the 2 that better be good and solid, because they're the 2 that's just on the outside of the top 12, Boyer and Burton.
And they got a shot.
Marty, what's going on with Jeff Burton?
Yeah, we talked yesterday about how it's time for Jeff Burton and his teammate Clinton Boyer to make a move here in the final few races before the chase cutoff. And it's nice to hear Jeff Burton behind the wheel saying very positive things about his race car. He said it's very competitive the way they are right now. He wouldn't change a whole lot. Scott Miller's making one very small change here on this time to the garage area. They're also working on the air conditioning to Jeff Burton, which currently is not working, and it's clearly gotten warmer outside as well. So very positive things here in the 31 camp, hoping to make a few more changes to get him back out a couple more times.
Hey, thank you, Marty. Appreciate the update as we watch Dale Earnhardt Jr. Early in this practice, he said to his team, I can wreck just about anywhere.
And then obviously they have spent most of this practice in the garage area, I think, making changes, because he's run about as few laps as anybody. He's only run 11 laps with this 88 car. The winner here in 2005 has 3 top 10 finishes in his 8 starts.
You know, guys, it's part of the mystery of the sport. Yesterday, he was all smiles. He and Lance McGrew happy, laughing. Today, whole different ball game.
Well, you got to understand something, though. As the racetrack changes, you got to change with it.
All right, I just want you to take a look right here at the miles per hour. This is in race trim. You saw 194 miles per hour going into turn 1. Low 140s off the throttle in the middle of the corner. Now we're going down that shorter kind of a curved back straightaway. And I think you're going to see high 180s right there, 188 miles per hour. This is a fast racetrack without a lot of banking to hold the speed. 18 degrees. That's half of what we had roughly at Daytona last week.
And as Jeff said, identical to the Michigan International Speedway, but Michigan a half mile bigger.
See Dale Earnhardt Jr. starting to move that groove up just a little bit, but I still think the race, as I said earlier, will be won at the bottom of the racetrack.
Take a ride with Dale Earnhardt Jr. Mark Martin is the fastest. He ran 14 laps for the time being. The 5-car stays in the barn. Speed's presentation of NASCAR Sprint Cup Final Practice from Chicago is brought to you by Toyota. For the latest Toyota racing information, visit toyotaracing.com. Toyota, moving forward. About 40 minutes into a 1 hour and 15-minute practice. Speaking of Toyota, there's Kyle Busch in his 18-car 9th overall. He's completed 31 laps.
Steve, you had asked a while ago about how many laps these guys will chalk up, and they're not being bashful. You know, as you mentioned, Kyle Busch 31 laps. I'm looking up there at Clint Boyer, 36 laps so far in his practice session.
Well, Larry, let's don't forget, we've only got a 400-mile race here tomorrow night. So, I mean, I think a lot of these engine builders and crew chiefs are all thinking, well, we got an extra 100 miles to play with. They're taking full advantage of it.
Like to listen to him get off the gas.
You hear him have to play with that throttle. The deeper you go into a run, you can't, like last night qualifying, you can't just mat it.
See on the graphic 100%, then off.
Now here's something that makes this track very unique. It's D-shaped. You just went down the front straightaway, but look at the back straightaway. It actually has a curve to it. Boy, he got loose right there.
Yes,
he said,
he
I've
did.
had enough. I'm coming to you, Steve Addington.
Woo.
But yeah, the back straightaway, some drivers told me they don't even realize it. Had the other drivers say, you're almost turning the wheel all the way around this 1.5 mile racetrack. You're never going straight.
I'm not too sure he didn't get a little tail happy, maybe get a little piece of that wall.
Sound like the RPMs picked up.
Yeah.
Youngest winner in NASCAR Sprint Cup Series competition. Joey Logano was just 19 when he won at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway in Loudon, New Hampshire.
And you know, 10 races ago, talked to Greg Zipadelli about this last week when we had him on trackside at Daytona. He basically, he was almost out of the top 35. The last 10 races, he has 4 top 10s. He's sitting 20th in the points, and he's completed all but 1 lap of competition in those 10 races.
Well, let's go down to the biggest Chicago Cubs fan in the garage with Matt Yoakum.
And he's definitely made big gains during this practice session. So are you guys done for the day, or are you going to try to make one more run?
Yeah, we're not done by no means. We were so far off in the first session. We changed everything, got the car good. In this session, I said, all right, let's just find out where we are, get our scale numbers, check our ride heights, and we've got 2 sets of tires left, 1 stickers, 1 scuffs. And so we just need to get a camber reading, and that means we got to go do a long run right after this.
And you've got a big weekend, not only the race tomorrow night, you've got a huge day on Sunday, doubleheader.
Man, I'm nervous. Doubleheader for the Cubs and the Cardinals. My buddy plays for the Cardinals, but I love the Cubs, and then I'm singing a 7th inning stretch, so they could be grabbing the Shepherd's hook. Who knows?
He did a great job back in 2005.
But what he was talking about is exactly what Marty was talking to Jeff and I about earlier. He said we need to make a long run. We need to get a camber reading. And what he's talking about is they want to see how the wear across the front tires, but you can't do it in just 4 or 5 laps. You need to make a very, very long run to get that. As we're looking at Sam Hornish Jr. in the 77 car right now, he's 26 quickest. You know, guys, I learned something about Sam Hornish Jr. yesterday that I did not know. Before he signed his contract with Penske Racing in 2002 to come run RL, one of his first questions to Roger was, do you think there'd ever be an opportunity for me to run in NASCAR? Everyone thinks this just came about a few years ago. This was being talked about even before he started running for Roger in the open wheel ranks.
Well, he's quite the competitor, and he's done so well in open wheels, and then he decided to make the transition over here. And guys, I don't mind saying, at one time I didn't think he was going to make it, but now you can definitely see the improvement with the number 77 team as well as Sam Hornish.
Marty.
Guys, Mark Martin's still done, and by the way, the car is still parked, and he's come over to across the garage to share a little counsel with his teammate Dale Earnhardt Jr. And you guys have mentioned Jr.'s struggling right now. The 8018 not very happy with the way this car is running. They're going to change the right front shock and put in a new right rear spring. And Larry Mack, it's really what you were talking about a moment ago. They're trying to fix the injury, but every time they do that, it makes the middle of the corner too tight. Jr. says, we're just making it worse on every run. We need to figure out what we're going to do to get this a little bit better. Way too tight in the center of the corner for Dale Earnhardt Jr. Fine balance here, isn't it, guys?
And there is no question, Dale Earnhardt Jr. has not forgotten how to drive a race car. But the more I think about his last 2.5 years with this new car, it's like they just have not been able to give him the feel he's looking for. And it's almost like to make the car turn through the middle, the car has a free feel getting in the corner. But Greg Biffle told me it took me a while to figure that out. The car won't spin out. It makes you think it's going to spin out, but it's not. But you have to have that feel to make it go through the middle of the corner.
It's a confidence. It's a confidence you've got to, I guess you might say, build into, and some guys have built into it a lot easier than others. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges right now for Lance McGrew, is being able to get him to understand that, look, work with me. I'll put you maybe a right front shock that slows it down, Steve, to make that transition in a little bit better.
And how about what Mark Martin brings to the table, that leadership, talking to Dale Earnhardt Jr. across that window.
That's the reason why he's there.
That's right. Tonight on Speed, NASCAR trackside storms into the Windy City as Martin Truex Jr. and Michael Waltrip stop by for our ultimate Friday night house party. That's 11 Eastern on Speed.
We're going to have some fun. We're going to rock the house.
Well, and of course, one of the big things, we'll talk to Michael Waltrip in this 55 car. A lot of announcements out of Michael Waltrip Racing as we head toward 2010. Michael will cut back to a limited schedule. We know for sure he's going to run the restrictor plate tracks at Daytona and Talladega. Martin Truex Jr. will drive the Napa number 56 car. Speaking of Martin Truex Jr., there he is, the one car. And you know, we didn't get a chance to really talk to Martin about this, but when you think about it, it has been a great ride for him at DEI. He won 2 Nationwide Series championships. He won Dover a couple of years ago. He made the chase. There's been a lot of high marks, but the last couple of years has been a bumpy road. We've had 2 different mergers over there. They've been in 2 different shops, and you know what? I think the guy that lured him to come there in the beginning left a couple of years ago, Dale Earnhardt Jr.
No, I think that had a huge impact as far as what he was wanting to do and what he could do. And as it went along, it just kind of had run its course, Larry. And I think it's time for him to move on. And, you know, hopefully, you know, Earnhardt Ganassi will continue to field the one car with either Eric Almirola or some other suitable driver. But, you know, you got to wish Martin Truex Jr. good luck over Michael Waltrip Racing. As a matter of fact, right there is his teammate for next year, David Rudiman, and he has had unbelievable year so far, Steve.
He has, Jeff, and Michael Waltrip consistently gives David Rudiman credit for helping ramp up the performance of that team as a whole. There's your pole sitter, Brian Vickers, and your points leader, Tony Stewart. Brian Vickers, the pole sitter. His teammate, Scott Speed, in the 82 will start alongside. Right now, Scott Speed has completed 23 laps, 15th overall.
And Steve, the thing about, you know, that fantastic run he was able to put down last night to give him the front row, it's very important, I think, for his confidence. But I think tomorrow night and the next 8 weeks are also so important because he needs to be able to claw his way back in that top 35. He's now got to go to Indianapolis in 2 weeks. He's got to also do the same thing he did here, make it into that race. And each and every week, it's a challenge, and I think he'll tell you that. Everybody involved with that 82 car will tell you there's a lot of pressure on them week in and week out to perform.
And you know, the way that group is running back there, all it would take is a couple of 3 top 15, top 20 runs, and you would be right up in the top 35. There's no question. John Andretti, I think, finished 16th at Loudon a couple of weeks ago and put a big cushion between him and this 82 car. Scott is 15th quickest. He's run a total of 25 laps in this practice session. Now, I've been watching Kevin Harvick in this 29 car, and he is trying all different grooves of this racetrack. The groove he's going to try now is coming to the garage area.
He didn't like the way that there felt. He's run 30 laps in this practice session, and I really thought his car had come around.
I can't get the power down like I need to, and I can't roll, and I can't get to the bottom and roll.
And what he means there is the car, it sounds like it's tight. It's not turning in the middle, and then he just can't put the throttle down because the grip of the tires just won't take it off the corner onto the straightaway.
Elliott Sadler in the 19 car. That car's green for a reason, Jeff Hammond. You
Yes,
can
it
explain.
is. You got insignia on the front of that car right there. And again, they're manufacturers of electrical appliances, especially televisions, and they're in Best Buy. And they're coming on board to support Elliott Sadler, Richard Petty Motorsports.
And you can buy 19-inch televisions. Get it?
You can
Car
get it
19.
Right,
That's
exactly.
exactly right.
I told him
Oh,
earlier, I
wow.
said, I'm glad your number's not 1 or 2.
Now, I heard what you told him. You really wanted to be 60.
That would be good. That would be good. But, you know, when you look at Elliott Sadler, the last 4 races, he's sitting there with 3 top 12 finishes. Finished 10th at Daytona last week.
Marty.
Guys, Ryan Newman, real quick update on him. He's in the garage area. Said he felt a vibration. So crew chiefs, what do? You might as well just change everything, changing the gear and the entire drive line here on the 39 car, making sure that the vibration goes away. They'll get him back out in this session after they make all these changes, hoping that that vibration went away when they did make those changes.
And you know, Jeff, that's the things I don't miss about being a crew chief. Here you are, about 20 minutes to go in practice. We've been here since yesterday morning, and all of a sudden now we got a vibration in the drive line, and all you can do is what they're doing. Change the drive shaft, change the gear. If that doesn't fix it, then we have to evaluate, do we want to change the transmission before the race tomorrow night?
And through all that right there, guys, just remember one thing. Everything on that race car right now is over 100 degrees as far as temperature is concerned. The grease in the rear end, those axles, the drive shaft, you're running around there, you're running out of time. It's pretty warm down in the garage area. There's a lot of pressure on these guys to not only perform quickly, but to do it right.
Got about 20 minutes left in this practice. And Mark Martin is back out on the racetrack. He ran 14 laps, parked it for a while, and now he's back out.
But I think now the sun has went in and this racetrack is starting to cool down. So I think you can put more stock in what this racetrack tells you right now about your race car.
Yeah, like we said earlier, I think the combination of Alan Gustafson and Mark Martin, they looked at the sky, said, hey, sun gone away, track temperature's cooled back down. Now let's go back out and make a couple little minor adjustments to see if the car is still where we want it to be.
You know what's amazing about Alan Gustafson and Mark Martin? We had Mark on our trackside show at Dover, so that was what, race 13 or 14 of the season. Mark said that was the first time in this 2009 season that the car wasn't very close to what he needed right off the truck.
He qualified so bad, he told us he was afraid Rick Hendrick was going to pick up the phone, call him, and fire him.
Said it was like a basketball going down the backstretch.
Well, you remember we watched that car, and it was bouncing down in there. But the cool thing about it with Alan, he's got so much respect from Mark Martin, and Mark's got so much respect for him. There's no way they're going to lose, and that's the reason why they've already won 3 races this year.
July 18th on Speed, the NASCAR Camping World Series thunders into Kentucky. A season of wild wrecks, fantastic finishes, and first-time winners. Don't miss a single lap. The Built Ford Tough 225, live from Kentucky, July 18th at 6:30 Eastern.
See Dave Blaney in the 66 car, one of the quicker of the go or go home cars yesterday. He's going to start 18th tomorrow night.
And Larry, he's one of the guys, he was the last car to get out there on the track during his final practice and make some laps. He's only run like 5 laps in this practice session. So he too was waiting, I think, for that racetrack to go through one of its final changes, and it's starting to finally cool down.
And it's going through a big change right now.
It is.
Sun is hiding once again. We had heavy rain here this morning.
And we've seen Kurt Busch in the 2 car, Sam Hornish Jr. in the 77 car. There's their 3rd teammate, David Stremme, in the 12 right now. He's 28th quickest, now 29th. And this is what we've been talking about. That 4:15, 84-degree track temperature, that was during the first practice. When this practice started almost an hour ago, 92 degrees. Now she's starting to cool down a little bit, and that's the reason I think we're seeing cars like Mark Martin, the 5 car, back out there on the racetrack.
Mark Martin has run a total of 24 laps. David Stremme, meanwhile, has now run 33 laps. Roush Fenway's Greg Biffle, 14th overall right now. He has completed a total of 23 laps. Let's go back to Matt Yoakum.
And Steve, moments ago I took the track temperature. We're within about 3 degrees of what the temperature was of the first practice session compared to this session. So a number of changes these guys are experiencing. And when you talk about a number of changes with the 14 car, Darian, Grubb, and these crew guys have really had a lengthy list, and they've really dialed this number 14 car in. Stewart was fighting really a big grip issue. Extreme loose on entry and exit, but also it just would not turn at all to the center of the corner. They have really migrated to a package that Stewart's very comfortable with. 16 on the board, and you talk about one other change, Larry Mack. Look at this specially wrapped paint scheme on this Office Depot Chevrolet. Their back-to-school paint scheme. It took 6 hours, but the thing I want you to notice, Jeff and Steve, if you notice all the different things on it, it looks a lot like Larry Mack's briefcase.
It does.
And pocket protector if he turned that briefcase upside down. Ruler, markers, highlighters, they've got it all going on.
And Matt, that's the reason when I saw the race car, I turned to Larry immediately and said, hey, did your daughter, Doodlebug, have anything to do with this paint scheme? Because I knew she had a great, I guess you might say, source of information for the idea.
But Matt, you know, if Larry Mack puts one more piece of paper in his briefcase, it's going to explode.
But you know what's not on that car?
What?
And I will be using it tomorrow night on the broadcast on TNT, is the calculator, because we know this race, 267 laps, 400 miles, can come down to fuel mileage.
You saw him putting fuel into 14 right then, didn't you?
That's it.
I like the old wooden ruler across the TV panel. Like that.
In the notebook on the deck lid, I think said something about teacher's pet.
I don't like them rulers. They bring back.
They smack you. You
they
were bad.
They bring back bad memories.
Smack your knuckles.
My knuckles are the least of my worries.
Jeff Gordon, he has definitely run a number of laps in this practice session. He's still 8th quickest, but he's run a total of 38 laps. But I'm looking up there, Clint Boyer, who is 2nd quickest, he's run 59 laps in this practice session.
He has run some laps in that 33 car.
But I think this is, you have to run laps here. You know, and if your car's way off, as we saw like Tony Stewart's car in the first practice, there's no sense in just logging laps out there. But when you get to this practice, you better make a long run to know what that car is going to do.
And let's talk about something else. That 33 car, relatively new team. They don't have a lot as far as any kind of notes from years past. Shane Wilson and, you know, Clint first time together. So it kind of like makes sense. You take a look up there. There's Clint Boyer up there with the owner right there of Richard Childers on top of the truck. And I guess they're trying to figure out exactly how they kind of fall in with all the laps they've run. Am I really happy with it, Richard?
But I believe they might be done. He's up on top of the hauler with his owner, Richard Childers.
Run that many laps, he should be.
Let's go back to Marty.
They are done to answer the question, guys. Clint Boyer, 59 laps in this session. As you mentioned, Jeff, quite a bit trying to gain some notes. First session was not good for that race team. They kind of went back to basics for this session, got it where Clint was very happy, and they made some long runs. That last run, 20 laps on brand new tires. Clint said it was really good at the end of that run, a little too tight, and he's up there discussing, as you see with Richard Childers right now, about how happy he is with that race car. Another one of the guys who will run the nationwide race tonight as well.
But they did exactly what we talked about. It's almost like that he and Shane Wilson said, what's our best package? They put it in that race car, put new tires on, filled it up with fuel, and went about half of a fuel run, roughly 20 laps.
And the other thing is, if you notice, Steve, they're racing that monitor, just like we do up here in the booth. They're looking to see how many laps he run, when he run his fastest lap, how many, you know, as far as the number of laps run. There's so much information that you get off those screens that help you make a decision of, am I really as good as I think I am? You want that reinforcement every time, and it's all based off of lap times and miles per hour.
And you saw Clint Boyer climb up to the highest part of that transporter so he could watch the line that other drivers are taking here at the Chicagoland Speedway, including his teammate, Jeff Burton.
Well, Jeff Burton's not being bashful. Scott Miller, the crew chief, are running laps right down to the 4th quickest, and that's 52 laps for this 31 car.
It almost makes you wonder that maybe they're changing something in RCR, running more laps rather than less to try to get better.
About 10 minutes remaining in this final practice for tomorrow night's race. Speed's presentation of NASCAR Sprint Cup Final Practice from Chicago is brought to you by Toyota. For the latest Toyota racing information, visit toyotaracing.com. Toyota, moving forward. We're moving towards the completion of this final practice. Jimmy Johnson, who was fastest in the first practice, right now 11th overall. He's put 32 laps on the board.
And, you know, talking to Chad Knaus on this 48 car, when you look at the fact of their point situation here with the 8 races to go, they're sitting 3rd in the points. They're looking pretty good shape. I think they're going to make the chase. They have the 2 wins in 2009. The biggest thing they want to get, more of those 10 bonus points. There's 80 more bonus points that's out there. 10 points per win to add to your total headed in the chase. Kyle Busch having the most bonus points right now with 3 wins. Of course, Mark Martin, who's outside the top 12, he has 30 bonus points, but you have to finish in the top 12 for him to mean anything.
Jamie McMurray just put up a pretty big number. He's 9th overall in his Roush Fenway Ford.
I've been watching him. He's been running fairly well, but right there with had about 34 laps, I guess, on that other set of tires. They looked like they bolted on a brand new set of tires and kind of jumped him up there, but he's running about 40, almost going on 45 laps in that 26 car.
You know, Steve, you mentioned that we're closing in on the end of this final practice session. Of course, you and Jeff and myself will still be here for the final 17 races, doing a lot of practice and qualifying shows on speed. But this is the final weekend for the 6-race TNT race package. Of course, we come on the air on TNT 5:30 Central Time tomorrow night, 6:30 Eastern. I just want to, I know I speak for you guys, some people that we've worked with for these 6 weeks that we want to definitely thank. Jeff Randolph, who's done a lot of the producing, Mike Wells, who's been our director, giving us a great shot, and the guys and girls that are in the booth here that make it possible for us to do what we do. Barb, Ron, Greg Newton, we like to call him Fig, and our 4 pit reporters that's worked hard in the garage area for these 6 weeks, Matt Yoakum, Marty Snyder, Adam Alexander, Lindsey Zarnak. It's just one big family that brings to you on speed all of these practice and qualifying sessions each and every week.
Well said, Larry McReynolds, team player.
It's all about a team.
That's right. On board with Denny Hamlin.
And I do need to mention Bill Sloboda, who gives us a lot of good notes, and he works with me down there at the TNT rig for the 6 weeks. Sometimes you can't read the sticky notes, but he gives you sticky notes.
That's great.
Larry, if you put your glasses on, you'll be able to see.
77.
That's what scares me.
Denny Hamlin 8th overall, 43 laps of practice. Top 5 finishes in 3 of his last 4 races.
You know what, guys? I think all in all, you know, even though teams were prepared for this after yesterday's practice session, I think a lot of guys right now down that garage area got to be breathing a sigh of relief, being able to get both these practice sessions in this afternoon, and in conditions I think are very representative of what they'll see tomorrow.
And you know, we joke a lot about paying attention to the weather, but that's what those crew chiefs live and die by. Chad Knaus, Larry, when he was backstage last night at the speed stage, talking about qualifying trim versus race trim yesterday, he concentrated on race trim because of the impending weather.
Well, we have a lot of fun with how much I follow the weather and pay attention to the weather, but just like Jeff Hammond, you had to do it. I did it for 18 years trying to anticipate how things are going to be as we see this little battle here in the final laps of this practice session between Jeff Gordon, Martin Truex Jr. Now, obviously, in the 1992 Southern 500 at Darlington, I didn't do a very good job with weather, but it becomes a way of life because when you look at all of sports, wind affects golfers, it affects a football game, but every aspect of the weather affects these race cars, the way they drive, the way they perform.
Yeah, the way they run on the racetrack. We see a pretty good battle right here, guys. As we get close to the end of practice, the 2-car Kurt Busch, he talked about he needed to go out and try to figure out what his camber was going to look like, make a fairly long run. Jeff Gordon now putting a little pressure on him, and not too far behind him was the 1-car Martin Truex Jr.
You know, get back to the weather for a minute. A guy that we all knew and loved, Neil Bonnet, told me one time, talking about humidity. He said, you know what, think about an engine like your body. When it's hot and humid, it's tougher for you to run.
Yeah, you can't
Same
breathe.
thing, you can't breathe. Same with the motor.
Breathe. It won't make any horsepower.
2 guys running 2 different grooves there. Kurt Busch through the high side through 1 and 2. Jeff Gordon at the bottom. I think you're going to see the same thing here through 3 and 4. What you're seeing right here is the reason that this racetrack has become a great racetrack for side-by-side racing. Wasn't like that the first couple of years. Now she's getting there.
Jeff Hammond said they're going to be 3 wide tomorrow night.
Ooh,
you can
hold
make
on.
book on that, baby.
You know what
3
they'll
wide.
say? Hang on, Elizabeth. This is going to be the big one.
Big one. Final moments of this final NASCAR Sprint Cup practice for tomorrow night's 400-mile race here at the Chicagoland Speedway. Crazy weather here in Chicagoland.
It has
It's a
been
windy
all
city,
over
baby.
the place.
Golly.
It blows in
over
and
the
blows
place.
out.
But I still believe that the crew chiefs, the drivers, the engineers, they're relieved to see it get a little overcast here in the closing stages, because this will give them, as I said a while ago, a better read on this racetrack for tomorrow night's 400-mile race.
Here's our buddy right there, Cousin Carl, and he is definitely looking to turn things around, at least at this racetrack. He's run really well here before. He just had some bad luck, and he just really would love to, I think, get out of here.
59.
And if at all possible, with a top 5 finish. But I know he'd love to get back to victory lanes. We talked about that earlier. I believe he's one of the cars that can do it tomorrow night. I really do. I think he's running well enough to be able to handle that. He's 6th quickest in this practice. And again, I just think that he and Bob Osborne will be tough to beat tomorrow night.
Yeah, he's by far the fastest forward. His teammate Jamie McMurray, you could hear him playing with the throttle late exit of turn 4. One driver told me you almost drive the car as much with the pedals here as you do the steering wheel. You've got to play with that throttle.
10 4, 32 flat.
Bob Osborne.
What do you want me to do? Get a plug check and bring it in.
Shut her off.
Getting a plug check, that way the engine tuner, the cat in the hat, Jack Roush as well, can look at the plugs and talked about humidity and things they need to look at to see exactly how to tune that engine for tomorrow night.
Earl Parker was the first one I saw read plugs.
And
That's
he
right.
could definitely read them, that's for sure. Brad Keselowski, the 25 car, and Greg Biffle, the 16 car. Of course, the last time Brad Keselowski was at the track with the 25 car, they missed the show at Dover. Right before that, had a great top 10 run at Darlington.
But he did a great job last night jumping out of that nationwide car, making that first lap of qualifying. Wasn't what he needed. Rallied back on that second lap and got that 25 car in there because of it. That's pretty impressive.
Final laps, final seconds of this practice. We want to remind you later tonight, 11 Eastern, trackside. Join us for our Friday night party. Michael Waltrip, Martin Truex Jr. will join us. Thanks for being with us here at Chicagoland.